Right now, it is time to bring in Arthur Schwartz. That's right, Arthur Schwartz, the food maven, is joining us once again this morning, as he does every Monday morning. Good morning, Arthur.
Once again?
Once again, that's right. Every Monday.
I have been on Robin Hood Radio now. I think it's maybe 16 years.
It's in the teens, yes. I'm not sure, but it's in the teens.
It's somewhere there, yeah. I have, although I have pots and pans older than that. That's my segue into the subject of the day. I'm obsessed with this because I can't avoid it on TV. So here's the story. January is a very slow month for a lot of things, like restaurant going, including advertising. It is a very cheap month to advertise on commercial television and commercial radio, and I know this from being on commercial radio, which this is not. So, Marshall, you may not have this experience, but in January, I could expect there to be very little advertising and or the junkiest, cheapest spots imaginable. And so here we are in the middle of January, and besides there being a lot of diet and exercise commercials, which is appropriate to the season, there's also a lot of cookware commercials. And I'm trying to think, why is this? And it's all junk cookware. And meaning it's this very thin metal, I don't know what metal it is even. I think they say it's aluminum, but I doubt it's real aluminum, because aluminum is a very good conductor. So anyway, there's a lot of junk cookware on TV, and I'm warning you away from it. I did buy some years ago one of these copper look-alike kind of skillets, no-stick skillet.
I bought one too.
Yeah, it's the one where they put sucking candy in the skillet and melted it down, and it looked like a stained glass window in the end, and it popped right out of the pan. That was impressive. So I bought one, and it was cheap. It was like, I don't know, $20, $30. What did you remember how much it cost, Marshall?
Yeah, it was $19 and some.
There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, it was cheap. So I figured, well, for $20 I can risk this. Yeah. Anyway, I do use it. I actually do use it to make eggs in the morning. Not all the time. I have other pans. I don't want them to be ignored. But it's very good for making eggs. A no-stick surface, just in general saying, a no-stick surface is good for eggs. Not you can make if you make frittatas, they come right out of the pan. Everything slips and slides in a good no-stick pan. But I want to do first, before I get into brand names, I want to do generic. So what I cook with, I would say that if I was a poor person, which I am not, I would swear by my black cast iron. And I looked this up just this morning to verify my thought that it's very cheap. And a black cast iron is extremely cheap, meaning you can buy a superb 10-inch skillet for $30. If you splurge, maybe $40. Lodge, Lodge, is the major manufacturer of a cast iron cookware. It's the brand you're going to see everywhere. And they now have something called pre-seasoned black iron. Now, it is somewhat seasoned, but you really have to use cast iron for a while before it becomes fully seasoned. Although you could do repetitive seasonings yourself. And to do that, it's very easy. You take a little bit of vegetable oil, whatever kind you use in the house. Just put a little bit on a paper towel and rub or you could just put it like a teaspoon on the surface of the cast iron and rub it in with the paper towel. And when you have a very thin, by the way, inside and outside, and even the handle, when you have a very thin coating of oil on it, put it on the rack, directly on a rack in the oven. You can put a sheet pan underneath just in case something drips, but it won't if you have a thin layer of oil there. And you put the oven on, I would say 400, 450. It doesn't matter that much. And leave the pan in there for an hour, and then turn off the heat and let it cool down in the oven, and that's it. That's seasoning. Now I have two black iron skillets that I use regularly, meaning several times a week probably, and one fits inside the other for a reason. I have, by the way, an antique Wagner that I bought many years ago from a woman at a flea market whose business is to restore black iron, and I'll get to that in a minute. You can restore cast iron. So I have a big one. It's a 12-incher, more or less, old Wagner that was restored. And the other one is somebody in my building threw this away some years ago, and it's a Lodge, 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 double-handled, 10-inch black iron. I swear by this pan. In fact, I often leave it just on top of the stove because I use it so frequently. But I also like to grill meat. Well, let's say not everything, but sometimes I grill meat pressed down with one, and that I do in the cast iron skillet with the other cast iron, which fits into it on top as the weight. If I want even more weight, I can throw a can on top of that. But be careful of that. You don't want to heat up a big can that's on the stove after all. So black iron does need to be cared for, but you can buy I looked this up, you can buy a Lodge, and probably in a store it wouldn't even cost this much. You can buy a Lodge online for $40 delivered to your door, a 12-inch Lodge, and you season it the way I did. Now, when I first get a new pan, which has been a long time, I also have a ridged grill, a black cast iron ridged grill. People pay a lot of money for these things. I paid maybe $20 for this one. Anyway, the seasoning is an issue because you don't want to get any bare metal, which will rust. You want it all sealed, and may I say sealed with grease, sealed with oil, sealed with, I don't know the scientific name. And, but by the way, when you season the pan, it becomes black cast iron, it becomes no stick. I make, for instance, in my 10-inch, I make Dutch babies. Now, I do put butter in the pan, of course, but nothing sticks. I've made frittata in my very well-seasoned 10-inch cast iron, and it doesn't stick because at this point in its life, it's a well-cared-for black iron, and it doesn't stick. I wash them in hot water. I have a brush if I need, and the one side of the brush is scrapes. So if there's anything stuck, you can scrape it off with one side of the brush, then brush it. You can use soap on, well, let's say you can use dishwasher detergent, which is a degreaser, on black cast iron. The dictum not to ever use soap in cleaning black cast iron is because soap in the old days used to be made with lye, which is the enemy of your seasoning. In fact, I just watched the other day, there's a man on TikTok whose business is restoring black cast iron. And he starts out, and you should see some of these pans are just covered in rust, but you can remove the rust. He dips the pans in lye, which gets everything down to the metal. Somebody told me, I've never tried this, but somebody told me that if you run a black cast iron skillet through your dishwasher, I'm sorry, not dishwasher, in your oven self-cleaning mode, that you get the same result. I don't know. I've had stoves with self-cleaning, but I've never used it. My self-cleaner is my arm, and a good product. Anyway, so black cast iron is very inexpensive. It is not the best heat conductor, but it does retain heat, and it's the best surface for making grilled meat. I mean, I don't have outdoor ability to grill meat, so I do it in a black cast iron skillet. Depending on the thickness of the meat, if it's like an 1.5 inch steak, which is my minimum, it's 4 minutes on the first side, 5 minutes 4 minutes on the second side, and then maybe 1 minute on the thick edge. A 2-inch steak, I would finish it off in a 500-degree oven, meaning I would sear it on both sides, 4 minutes a side the most, and then stick it in a 500-degree oven for, doesn't take more than 5 or 6 minutes at that temperature. And the black cast iron really does create a wonderful sear. I don't make things with sauces, usually, in black cast iron, although you can deglaze. Let's say you have made a steak and you want to make a little pan sauce. You can throw in your liquid and make a sauce. So stepping up, I use black cast iron pretty regularly, as I said, but I have to admit my main cooking ware is copper. And, of course, that's the most expensive of all cookware, and for good reason. It's the most conductive metal. As I said before, aluminum is the second most conductive metal, but the problem with aluminum is that it interacts with your food. You can't cook acidic sauces. I don't like to. People say don't put eggs in aluminum. I don't cook in bare aluminum, so I haven't tested any of this. But aluminum coated with stainless steel, which is what all-clad is excellent. Now, all-clad is the highest end of stainless steel, and people swear by their all-clad. I have one all-clad pot, and it's a small saucepan, and it's the all-clad that has the copper in between stainless steel, so it's very conductive. It's a very nice little pan, and I use it almost daily. But a large all-clad saute pan will set you back almost the same amount as a copper one. Now, copper being the highest conductivity metal, which is why wiring is made, good house wiring is copper. It's so conductive. Copper will interact with food. So all copper is lined with something. I have copper old, meaning I bought it when I first started cooking 50 years ago. I went to Paris and I bought myself a trio of copper skillets, and they are lined with nickel. I've been told nickel's not such a good metal for your health. I have yet to find any mention of this anywhere. It's only a buzz among cooks, but I don't know. I've been using this, as I say, for 50 years. I don't use it every single day, but I'm fine, and my mental acuity is fine. That's like they also say that about aluminum, but aluminum also, as I pointed out, the really good aluminum is also lined with something so that it doesn't interact with your food. It could be stainless steel. In the case of all-clad, it's clad all over. That's why it's called all-clad. I also have copper, old copper, lined with tin. Now, the problem with tin is it's a thin layer of tin over the copper, and it really doesn't diminish the conductivity of the copper, but it does wear off. And you shouldn't be cooking in bare copper, or at least not much bare copper. So you have to have the pots re-tinned depends on how much you use them and what utensils you use. I now know that when it says use a wooden spoon, sometimes there's good reason, because in my case, if you're using tin-lined copper, you need to use non-metallic utensils, silicone or wood. Now we have silicone too. So that's another metal. Now, and the problem with the tin is that it's very hard to find anybody to re-tin copper now. I used to have a guy in Manhattan who then moved to New Jersey, and then you had to leave the stuff at a gas station for him to pick up, and blah, 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 and it took months, and then he disappeared off the face of the earth. Now, I found a guy in Philadelphia. When I go to visit my nephew, I suppose I could bring copper there. And there is a mail order place, and they do the frightening part of getting copper retinned is by mail order is the cost of shipping the pot back and forth. But this company, if you look it up online, you'll find it. It's the same way I did. You'll find that they send you mailing stuff to mail it. Anyway, it's a good system, and I hear they do a good job. Then I do have copper that is lined with stainless steel, and I consider this particular line of copper that I own the Rolls-Royce of copper cookware. It's called Falk, F-A-L-K. If you're in the market for something really special, or you want to give somebody a really special gift, cook you know, look at the line of Falk, made in Belgium. And it is not shiny copper. It is a brushed copper on the outside, which I wasn't wild about when I first got it. But now not only am I used to it, but I prefer it because it cleans up so well. And it doesn't. It's just brushed. Inside, somehow bonded with some patented bonding technique, is a rather beautiful stainless steel interior. And I have a 2-quart saucepan, which I use all the time. I have I guess it's 10.5-inch saute pan, which is to say a skillet with straight up sides, and that's for braising. I make chicken in there. That has a cover that fits it very tightly. And then I also have, using the same cover, a Dutch oven. By definition, a Dutch oven is a deep pot. I don't know. In the simplest terms, it's just a deep pot. A real Dutch oven, meaning from like colonial America, had an indent, a cover that had a valley in it that you would put some of the cinders from the fireplace in. So your oven was an oven. In other words, it was getting heat from the bottom, and it was getting heat from the top, totally surrounded by heat, whatever was in there. So it was an oven, Dutch oven. We nowadays just have covers. It should have a nice heavy cover. And as probably everybody who doesn't even own one knows, the top of the line is Le Creuset, or Le Creuset, if you're afraid of speaking bad French. They are French. There's another company, also French, that I actually like. It's new, even better. It's a new. When I say new, this company only exists maybe 30 years, and I bought my Le Creuset more than 30 years ago. Staub, S-T-A-U-B. You've probably, if you watch TV, sometimes you hear a cook. I never saw it advertised, but you hear somebody say, "Oh, I did this in my Staub." It's really heavy, cast iron, enameled on the outside. Now, they make wonderful colors, but I only own the matte black 4-quart Staub Dutch oven. Maybe you can call it a casserole, too. And I use that. That actually sits on top of my stove, which is why it's matte black. I don't want to bring a lot of attention to it, and my kitchen has a lot of black in it anyway. The matte black looks like a perfectly seasoned black cast iron, but it's not. It's enameled on the outside and on the inside. I have had mine for maybe 3 or 4. Well, I date everything now, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. That is a pre-COVID pot, so it's got to be 4 years old.
Yeah.
It looks like brand new, and the reason I bought it for myself is that this pot is usually like $250, $260, but my Le Creuset, after 40 some odd years, my 3.5-quart Le Creuset also sat on top of the stove, used very regularly, like almost daily. But also, I burned food in it. Over the years, I really abused this piece of cookware, and so after 40 some odd years, I threw it away and bought the Staub, which was on sale for $99. Now, I'd heard of Staub, but I didn't. I just heard of Staub. I didn't know much about it, but I figured, well, it could be bad. A cast iron, black matte enamel, $99, delivered to my door, no postage. It's terrific. So I highly recommend Stout. Their big selling point, which shouldn't be because it's nonsense, is that the cover, which is very heavy, has these little, I don't know, stalactites coming down, and the theory is that as your food, the moisture from the food goes up to the lid, that helps redirect it back down into the food. So it's sort of self-basting. Well, any heavy cover, well-fitting cover, will do that. It doesn't have to have those little things on it. Anyway, so that's the Staub. Le Creuset, they're both very expensive. I cook in copper because I've been collecting this for so many years that, something that I bought at a cookware store for $100 is probably selling for $400 now. A lot of my stuff comes from the legendary Bridge kitchenware store. Do you know about Bridge?
No.
Well, his son, Steve, I say his son, trying to think of old man Bridge's name. It'll come to me. He was a nasty man, and so he was notorious in the food world. But on the other hand, he had everything you could ever imagine in this store, which moved around a bit. It ended up on, I think it's 54th Street, East 54th Street. I don't know what's there now. And then when finally, Fred Bridge, when Fred passed away, his wife, Carolyn, and his son, Stephen, took over the business, and eventually that kind of business couldn't survive in Manhattan anymore, and Stephen went digital, and there is a Bridge kitchenware online. I haven't looked to see what they carry, but a lot of my copper, a lot of my stuff in general, comes from Bridge kitchenware because I don't know why, but I was that rare guy that Fred Bridge actually liked. I actually I did witness him make a grown man cry. He was very mean to some people. This man, in this particular case, I'll never forget this. This man came, after all, in Midtown off Madison Avenue. He looked like this had to be in the 1970s. He came in dressed like a Madison Avenue guy would be, and he asked for Mr. Bridge. You always called him Mr. Bridge. You asked Mr. Bridge for a spatula, and Fred went on and on about, did he really want a spatula? Did he want an offset spatula? Did he really want a hamburger turner? I mean, there were at least a half a dozen different vocabulary words I never heard for kitchenware. So, and I learned that day. So the man, he said, my wife just said, go buy me a spatula. And he really was in tears. So I don't know. I don't remember what the result of that was. I'm sure Fred, being a good salesman, in fact, didn't let him leave without a spatula. All the chefs used to go to Fred. They needed sometimes strange things or very specific things, I should say, and he would get them for him, for them, and then he would buy extras for the store, figuring, the chef is using it, maybe there must be some other people interested in it. But sometimes there wasn't anybody else interested in it, and sometimes I got those things. For instance, this is only for decoration. I never use it, but he gave me a copper ladle lined with silver. Now, silver is another copper lining, and as my mother always said, you never regret what you buy, just what you don't buy. And this is something I didn't buy and I regret. I was offered to buy at a very reasonable price a set of copper pans lined with sterling silver. And silver apparently has a very long life if you don't use metal utensils on it, if you only use wooden spoons and stuff. But I didn't buy it, but I still think about it. I have many pieces of copper lined with stainless, and I use them. Like I have several copper gratin dishes. They're all stamped with Bridge kitchenware. So he gave them to me, or I bought them, or I had a friend who was addicted to copper, Ann Amendolara Nurse. After Mr. Nurse passed away some years ago, Jean Nurse, her very long-time husband, she really did like to be called Ana Rosa Amendolara. So Ana Rosa Amendolara was literally addicted to buying copper. And when you walked into her house in Brooklyn, besides that the front porch screened in, windowed in the winter, a front porch had become a larder of sorts, lined with all kinds of food, in the fall, squash. I mean, really everything. And then you walked into her living room, dining room, which is a big, big room, and all you could see really was copper and various kinds of other cookware, but a lot of copper. And over the years, she made presents of it to her friends who cooked. So I have some of and it all came from Bridge. And every once in a while, I run across something, like in the back of a cupboard, and I say, why do I have this? And I see, Bridge kitchenware, stamped on it. So I even have my main knife, my favorite knife, came from Bridge. And I think I mentioned this only a couple of years ago, just recently, in its last sharpening, did the word Bridge that was etched into the blade, did it finally get blurred out, sharpened out, so to speak. So what other cookware? There's a lot beyond, things you put over the flame, like black cast iron and copper cookware. The other things you put over the flame is boiling pots. So I have my main boiling pot, which is a 7-quart Farberware. Remember that name?
Yeah.
Past. I don't think they make Farberware anymore. This Farberware came from my mother, who bought a whole set of Farberware and then realized she had absolutely no use for a 7-quart boiling pot. It was just her and my father at home. So she gave me the big pot, and then I didn't know what happened to the other pots, but when my sister downsized, moved from her big house in New Jersey, I discovered that there was an unused, smaller, I guess it's a 5-quart, maybe 4, no, it must be 5-quart, also stainless steel Farberware. In those days, Farberware came with heavy aluminum bottoms because that is way more conductive. The sides are stainless steel. And I say boiling pot because I don't like thin stainless steel if you're cooking over, if you're sautéing, or, even the beginning of a soup, for instance, which I do make in that big pot and the smaller version of it. It's just a matter of sautéing on the bottom of the pot, so it's okay. But beyond that, stainless is not good for sautéing or for grilling or whatever, anything directly over the fire. So that's my boiling pot. I steam vegetables in that too. I just have one of those collapsible steamers. Watching the TV ads for cookware, to come full cycle with this, they're all selling sets of not very good cookware for what I think is abusive prices, and deceptive, because they'll say in these commercials, this is a $600 value, but you pay only $49.95 in 5 easy payments.
That's right.
So you're paying $250 for a lot of bad cookware. Then they say, and this is going to be free. Then they throw in a steamer, for instance, or there was one that's a fryer basket, which of course has just inflated the supposed price by $100, but you're getting it for free. Anyway, do not buy. Here's a generality that I live by: do not buy sets of any pots, because you're not going to use all those pots. Better to spend your money on one good pot. If you need a boiling pot, if you need a sauté pan, what do you feel like you're missing, or that you can upgrade? Just get one. And really, if you keep your eye on the sales, a lot of these things can be bought at a relatively inexpensive price. For instance, my Staub, $100 for this. Really, it's an heirloom pot. This is indestructible. somebody will inherit it. I have, fortunately, some cooks in my family, so I know they're going to like my cookware. Anyway, that's it. Don't buy sets of anything. I would not buy anything that's advertised on TV. Stainless steel, pure stainless steel, is not a good conductor. I'm very upset with Emeril Lagasse because he's doing a lot of infomercials, and I just saw briefly one. He's advertising some no-stick cookware, and then he's comparing it to some stainless steel pan, and of course a crepe is going to stick to a stainless steel pan. Nobody cooks crepes in stainless steel. In France, they cook crepes in very well seasoned iron. So there you go, Emeril. And he also advertises, I don't know, these are all gimmicky things to me, the fryer, air fryer. I had an air fryer 35 years ago, except they called it something else.
Convection.
Well, right. It was as a countertop convection oven, really. It got to, I don't know what temperature, not all that high, but it had a very strong fan inside, which kept the heat circulating and on the surface. Anyway, he advertises that. And the other thing, I do have one exception to buying a set of anything. By the way, here's another exception. If you have to go to a wedding shower, or you need an engagement gift, you can buy a whole set of something because you need a piece or two, and then give the rest to the bride. If you're saving money by buying the whole set. But I bought years ago sets of 3 skillets. The brand is, and I bought these at Costco. Tramontina, Tramontina. It sounds like an Italian company, but it's not. It's an American. Company. I think somebody told me they're made in Korea, South Korea. I'm no problem with that. I haven't verified that. But Tramontina, I bought a 12-inch, 10-inch, and 8-inch skillet nested together with a very good no-stick inside and very attractive enamel outside. $29.99 or whatever it was, $30 at Costco. So I looked this morning just because I knew I wanted to mention this, and it ends up you can still buy that trio of skillets, Tramontina. I don't know what colors are available. I have red ones. By the way, I started out with brown ones, and my most used brown one, which is the 10-inch one, did lose its non-stick after about 4 or 5 years, but for $29 for 3, I didn't care. I bought another set. So I think it's $40 online, and they're extremely useful. It's a heavy gauge cast aluminum pan with a very nice but just decorative enamel on the outside, and I don't know what the no-stick interior is, but it works. And I do have silicone spatula, hamburger turner. Fred Bridge would correct me. I think people came into his store and asked stupid questions, or they didn't know that this was a professional level cookware store. So he would get irritated. And also, I only knew him when he was old, and I understand being old and irritated.
Right.
Curmudgeonly is the word I used to use for my grandfather, who was a curmudgeonly waiter in a Jewish dairy restaurant. You know those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they truly hated their customers. I don't think Fred actually hated his customers. Well, he didn't hate me, for sure. And I treasure my silver-lined copper, among other things. He got hooked on these salesmen would come into him, and he'd like the salesman, so he would carry the line of cookware. And I don't want to say stuck, but I have a piece of stainless steel. It's a 3-quart stainless steel saucepan that I still use from Fred, and it has a very heavy aluminum base, very heavy, and nothing between the stainless and the air on the top, but it does have a very good lid that seals everything in. And so I do use that pan, and I'm sure that was not Fred's kind of pan, but that was some nice salesman who came in. And all right, I'll take some of your pots. And then he couldn't sell them to the chefs, so he gave one to me. Anyway, I love my cookware. I enjoy using my copper. It's impressive looking as well. I have it hanging on a wall. But it took a whole life to collect all this.
I've been collecting Le Creuset. People give me gifts. I have almost 18 pieces.
So I have one piece that I treasure. I'm going to just mention this because it's a cute story. But there's a woman in my building named Roseanne Warner. If anybody out there knew Roseanne, she was a really special person. At the end of her life, she was the also not all that nice woman at the Metropolitan Museum gift store. But anyway, she always used to tell me, I spell my name the same way your friend Roseanne spells it. My friend Roseanne spells it Rozanne, so, which is an unusual spelling, I gather. So Roseanne passed away, and I knew she had copper, but I didn't. When she passed away, that wasn't what I was thinking. But apparently, she had no heirs, and the copper cookware was put downstairs in our basement on the swap table, and it disappeared immediately, except for this one bowl. And my next door neighbor said, "Oh, do you know that they put all Roseanne's copper on the swap table, but there's one piece, and it's gone, but one piece is left." I go down, and it was left because it was black. Nobody could even tell that it was a copper bowl. So I restored the finish to the copper bowl. By the way, I use a product called Wenol, Wenol, made in Germany. It's not only great on copper, but it's unbelievable on silver. It not only polishes, but the shine lasts a long time, which is essential. Anyway, I polished up the bowl. It's a huge, unlined copper mixing bowl. I've never even used it because I never make that many egg whites by hand. And I polish it, and I find her name is actually etched into the metal. And she spelled her name Rose, Rose, new word, Ann, Ann. So all those years telling me I spelled my name the same way, unless somebody misspelled her name on her copper.
That's probably what happened, yeah.
Well, I don't know about that.
All right.
Roseanne was a rather controlling person. So. All right. Have a great week, everybody.
And we'll speak to you next Monday.
Next week we could talk about food.
Okay.
All right. What I cook in copper.
Okay.
Bye.
Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, this morning here on The Breakfast Club on Robin Hood Radio. Underwriting support for Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, Hillsdale Home Chef. More information, 518-325-7000, hgshomechef.com.